Hi, my name is Adam Kunzmiller, and I'm here with BGG TV. We're at Gen Con 2014, and I'm joined by Eddie Rodriguez with Griglin Games, and we're here to talk about Quartermaster General. So Eddie, tell me about this game.
All right, Quartermaster General is a World War II themed fast-paced strategy game. As you can see here, you have a board and you have a number of cards. In this game, the players are playing on teams, so you can play anywhere from 2 to 6 players. And the players are on teams of either the Axis or the Allies. Now, there are 6 countries in the game represented by these 6 different decks. Each country has its own deck, and they all play very differently. They have different strategy to play. Now, regardless of how many players play in the game, all 6 countries always play. So if just me and you play, then you'll run 3 countries for the Axis, and I'll run 3 for the Allies, or however we do. In a 6-player game, all 6 players will have their own deck and they'll manage that. So each deck also comes with a number of pieces that they have, and it's not the same for each one. So like for instance,
it looks like the Soviet Union has a lot of tanks, for
lot
example.
of tanks and only like 1 boat, and then you know the US has like even numbers on that. So they each play differently, and also each deck is actually different amounts. So the US has 40 cards and Italy has less. They have about 30 cards, which represents the country's resources. All right. So what you're doing in this game, it's a little bit of a throwback to some of the older war games, but it doesn't take quite as long to play. You don't have to delve 4 to 8 hours to play this. It plays in really under 2 hours. It's pretty fast-paced. And
even with 6 people?
Even with 6 people, yeah, it goes really, really fast. And you're going to see, because basically what you're going to do is you're going to have a hand of cards. You have a hand of 7 cards. And your turn is really simple. You're going to play a card. You're going to check, make sure that your units are in supply, because that's actually the real point of the game. It's not so much about the warfare. It's about keeping your units in supply and the logistics of that, but in sort of an abstract way. So you're going to check to make sure that you guys are in supply, and then you're going to score points, which is what you're really after in this game, not so much global domination. You're scoring points for your team. Now you score points, if you look on the board, you're going to see these starred locations. Those are supply locations. And on your turn, if you have some of your armies in those supply locations, you're going to score points for your team, which is tracked on this victory point track. And as you can see, these are marked for the Allies and the Axis. So each country is going to score points individually on their turn, but it goes to a team total. And all you're doing is you're going to be playing through 20 rounds with our track, which are tracked with this. And at the end of the 20 rounds, the team with the most victory points wins.
So it's always going to be 2 teams against each other, and then the players will control the various countries that are on those teams.
Correct. And you know, if you're playing with less than 4, the rule book actually tells you how to divvy it up,
how to split it,
and you know, you just play like multiple decks. Now the interesting thing is that in a multiplayer game, in the rules it says that the players are not allowed to share the information of what cards they have in their hand. And it's there to keep that alpha player from kind of dictating how the game goes. And also thematically, it's to simulate that even allies kind of keep, you know, sort of secrets from each other. So what you're seeing on the board here is, this is the beginning of the board of the game, and each country will start with a land piece in their starting space, and it's also a supply unit. So you're going to score points right from the beginning of the game, and you're going to score every turn. Now, the pieces don't move. Once you place them on the board or build them there, they will stay there. They don't really move from space to space. And the unit density is very light, so there's only usually one unit per space. So you'll never have 2 of your same units in a space. That will never happen. And enemy units will never be in the same space. You always attack from like an adjacent unit, or rather adjacent space. So what you're doing is, if you have a unit by itself in a space, it's going to score 2 points for its team. You can have allied units sharing a space, and basically what all they're going to do is they're going to score 1 point each on their team. So it's still worth 2 points, but it's kind of split up. But you may want to do that because it'll make it harder to take that location, because you have to get rid of both. So how does the gameplay work? You're going to have a hand of cards. You're going to play cards. And one of the more simple cards in the game is the Build Army card, and there's not a lot of text to it. You simply
that. It
play
almost looks like one of those propaganda posters or something.
Yes, actually that's where a lot of it was inspired.
Very cool.
So you play a Build Army card, and you will play a piece on the board. There's a couple build rules though, very simple. You have to build your piece next to one of your space pieces that's already on the board, and it has to be in supply. Well, what's in supply? You have to be able to trace a line to one of the starred locations. So for instance, if Germany was building out from here, they could put a guy in Eastern Europe here and a guy in Russia here, because they're tracing a line of supply. However, the supply lines are important, because if this unit in Germany is taken out, those two guys are now out of supply. So what happens is nothing bad happens yet. The only bad thing that happens is that, first of all, they cannot attack until they're in supply. Second, if Germany has one turn to reestablish that supply route, if he does not, he's going to lose those pieces as well. So it's important to kind of build those up, and you're going to need to, because since your units can't move, you have to sort of build those lines to get to your...
And Germany would have been able to establish that, in Ukraine as well, as long as it's attached to a supply?
Yes.
Right.
Well, Ukraine is a supply location, so, you can have a guy there. Now, how does combat work in here? Because people really want to know, and people want to get to the combat of the game, and it's a little bit abstracted, but it's actually really, really fun. So let's say we have a situation here where we have a unit in Moscow and a unit in Ukraine, and Russia wants to attack them. So first of all, you need to be adjacent and in supply, which he is, and you would just play the land battle card. And the land battle card just simply says you're attacking a land location. There's no having to figure out who's more powerful, who has a better position. You simply play the card and remove the offending piece.
Okay.
And it's pretty abstracted like that. Now, since you only play one card per turn, you can get into these situations where you'll do a land battle, take out a piece, and then the other player
somebody else will go there before you get another turn.
Right, and he builds it, and so you can have this back and forth, and it's like, well, is there much of a game there? Well, no, if it stays that way, no. There's ways to get around that. The simplest way is just to have two countries attack that one space, in consecutive turns. The other way is to find ways to break that dynamic. So for instance, Germany has a status card, and this is a status card. Now status cards are different in that most cards when you play it, you discard after you use it. The status card, when you play it, it stays out in front of you for the rest of the game unless something removes it, and they're hard to remove. So not this one, but there's a German status card called Blitzkrieg, which says when you attack a land space, you may immediately build in that space you just attacked, but they have to discard a card to do that. So there's a cost to it, but then they break that kind of back and forth dynamic. Now they get two actions for one. So part of the game, the strategy of the game is figuring out ways to break that back and forth, and each country does it a little bit differently. Germany, their strength is their status cards. They have a bunch that they can play and kind of sort of chain together into these nasty combos. So you want to kind of break that up if you can. United States mostly has cards that help their allies, and then sort of later towards the end game, they kind of bolster their position and stuff. So the fun of the game is figuring out each country's deck and playing it, and you really have a different experience each time you play.
Great. And how many cards will a player have from a country in their hand at one time usually?
You have 7 cards.
Okay.
Now the beginning of the game, you're actually going to draw 10 cards, but you discard 3 immediately. And so you sort of can set up a strategy there. One thing to keep in mind though is that not only do you have this hand management that you worry about, you have deck management, because the deck represents your country's resources. If your deck runs out, you don't get more cards, you don't reshuffle, and there's very few ways to get cards back. So for instance, if you're like a country like Italy, which has the smallest deck of 30 cards, and you're trying to last 20 turns, you have to be careful that you don't lose too many cards, because towards the end of your turn, you can choose to discard extra cards, as many cards as you want, because at the end of your turn, you also draw back up to 7.
Right, just to get more cards in.
Well, like let's say Italy's playing and they lose their capital, and they really need to build it, and they don't have the build card in their hand, they may want to chuck a bunch of extra cards to draw up and be able to get that, but you're kind of in danger of decking yourself.
Right.
Now, sometimes it may not matter so much, because you may not always go the 20 rounds. There's a couple other ways to win before the 20 rounds. If one team can take the 2 home capitals of an opposing team, they will automatically win. Also, the teams, the players always go in a specific order. So Germany will always go first, and the United States always goes last. If at the end of the United States turn, if one team is ahead by 30 points or more, that team will also automatically win.
Okay.
So there's a couple extra ways that you can win.
The blowout rule at that point?
Right. If your game is going that way, then you've pretty much been blown out. But the games that go 20 rounds are usually very competitive. You're only within a few points of each other. And one of the things about the game is that the designer's a big history buff, and he really put a lot of the history in it without it being like a history lesson. So you're going to notice as you play, you're going to sort of see almost like a story arc. Like the Axis is actually going to get a sizable lead early in the game because of the way the supply locations are. And then you see kind of the allies kind of come back from that later, and then from there, depending on how the players play, they're going to kind of have a back and forth action going there. And then there's some historical stuff in the cards. The cards mention, special events that happen throughout the game and things like that. And there's cards that are called events that sort of miscellaneous cards you play. It gives you some kind of effect and then you discard it. You also have these response cards, which are actually a lot of fun. You also have sea battle cards because you have sea units that you can build and stuff like that. But the response cards are a lot of fun because sort of like the status cards, you play them and they stay out in front of you, but you play them face down so your opponents don't know what you're playing. And they have a triggered effect. So, one may say, flip this card when your unit gets attacked, and then you flip it and then it'll say your unit survives the fight and is not destroyed. So there's like trick cards like that you can do. So Japan actually has, that's kind of their strength, is they can lay out a bunch of response cards, and a lot of them can sort of chain into each other. So that's sort of their trick there.
And when you get the response card out, you no longer have it in your hand, but you still get some value out of it.
Right, it's going to sit there, and sometimes it may never even affect the game, but you always got the other players wondering, like, what has he got there? Exactly. Especially when you have multiples out at a time.
Very cool.
So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. That's Quartermaster General.
And is this available now for purchase?
This is available right now. Actually, today is the release date of it, so it just came out now. But like our other games, it's not a Gen Con exclusive. So people that couldn't come to Gen Con, they should be able to go to their local store and pick it up.
Okay, great. And once again, that was Quartermaster General.